Thank you very much for joining the seminar towards building a corporate reporting ecosystem, commemorating the forming of Value Reporting Foundation. I'll be serving as the moderator today. From KPMG Japan, Corporate Governance Center of Excellence and Value Reporting Foundation, Japan Secretariat, my name is Takahashi. Now, without further ado, let us start the seminar. Mr. Toshiya Mori, KPMG Japan Chairman, will give an opening remark. Mr. Mori, the floor is yours. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Toshiya Mori, KPMG Japan Chairman. I would like to say a few words in opening the session. Thank you very much for joining us for the online seminar co-hosted by VRF and KPMG titled To Build a Corporate Reporting Ecosystem. And also, those who will be giving presentations today, I would like to extend our deepest appreciation to JPX. Last week, on June 9th, IIRC and SASB merged to form the Value Reporting Foundation, or VRF. We are most grateful to be hosting the world's first seminar under the new name here in Japan. Today's seminar is to commemorate the forming of VRF, and we will be hearing directly from those who are responsible for forming the new organization. Japanese companies and the related parties will be able to have access to the purpose and significance of forming a VRF. And I hope that this will be conducive to conducting better activities and reporting. At KPMG, we have a purpose of inspire confidence, empower change. This is our purpose. In this interconnected economic society, where ability to resolve social challenges and mid to long-term growth are closely related, accountability to gain trust from the society, and the role of reporting is more important than ever. The forming of VRF is quite meaningful to ensure trust, which is the foundation of the society, and to realize comprehensive reporting that support practice and transformation of businesses. At KPMG, as a way to put our purpose into practice, we have been continuously implementing various initiatives ever since the founding of IIRC and SASB. In order to make our sustainability activities more comprehensive and vigorously push forward, a sustainable value headquarters was established in-house within KPMG Japan. Furthermore, in order to address the growing needs, the KPMG Sustainable Value Japan has been formed to come up with active proposals on practical and effective approaches to resolve diversifying challenges. In order to realize a sustainable society that we aspire and to increase corporate value by contributing to realizing such a society, we are committed to move forward with other like-minded organizations for the well-being of the people. I hope today's seminar will offer an opportunity for you to think of value looking 10 or 20 years into the future, and that will lead to actions that open the door to the future in your organizations. We still have concerns over the spread of COVID-19, but in closing, I would like to wish you good health.
Now, I would like to call upon Mr. Miki, Mr. Miki of the Sustainable Mobility Department of the JPX JPX is supporting this webinar. Thank you very much for your kind introduction. I am Miki of the Sustainability Department of JPX. I would like to thank the host for giving me this very valuable opportunity. As you know, ESG investment is expanding in Japan too. Understanding and grasping the ESG elements are essential for investors, and further improvement of the quality of ESG disclosure is viewed increasingly important. In Japan, the Corporate Governance Code has been revised and released in June. And in the prime market, in particular, companies are required to disclose their basic policy on sustainability and their own initiatives. They will have to enrich the disclosure on elements related to climate change. And before it was released in June on the 11th, in April, there has been a public comment started, and I have keenly felt that the listed companies are really paying attention and focusing on this new development. So with this in the background, I believe that the Japanese market would experience a significant progress because the companies will take on the challenge to identify the important challenge of one's own company. And also, in the meantime, we recognize that there are many listed companies that are still in the early stages on preparation. And with the aim of supporting such companies, we published Practical Handbook of ESG Information Disclosure in March last year and launched a website called the JPX ESG Knowledge Hub in autumn. And JPX launched the JPX ESG Knowledge Hub website, which provides information on the IIRC and SASB, as well as information on the merger of the two organizations in Japanese. The handbook and website are designed to encourage the disclosure from the perspective of contributing to the enhancement of corporate value. But what investors want most is to be able to consider ESG disclosure in connection with their own core businesses. And I believe that companies will continue their trial and error process. We believe that the existence of disclosure frameworks such as IIRC and SASB will be quite helpful and useful for the companies in this regard. I am convinced that the integration of these two organizations, which have a large presence, will be of great benefit to both those who make disclosures and those who read disclosure information. In addition, I have heard that VRF may play a substantive role in the event that the IFRS Foundation establishes an organization that is responsible for setting international sustainability reporting standards. And in this sense, I am paying close attention to future developments. Last but not least, as a stock exchange, JPX would like to continue its very best to support the promotion of ESG investment. Thank you very much.
Mr. Miki, thank you very much indeed. Next will be the first half of the program, a keynote speech. Board member of Value Reporting Foundation and a director for ANA Holdings, Omron, Mizuho Holdings, and Mitsui & Co. We have with us Ms. Izumi Kobayashi here with us, who will be giving us the keynote presentation. Ms. Kobayashi, the floor is yours. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Well, it may not exactly be what you would expect from a keynote presentation, but I would like to talk about the trend that we're seeing in disclosure and what we can say from a Japanese corporate perspective. Recently, there has been extensive discussion on the purpose of companies. And the discussion of purpose, why now? Is it only me who have this question? Many Japanese companies have been working to improve the lives of people and contributing to the society. That has always been the founding principles of many Japanese companies. As we see in the Omi people, we talk about the seller and the buyer and the all stakeholders being benefiting from business activities. But Japanese companies tend to be referred to be poorly active, but there are many companies with very long histories of more than 100 years, and the purpose of Japanese companies have the purpose of working for the benefit of the the society at large. And maybe we can say that Japanese companies are at the forefront of many companies around the world. However, Japanese companies, whether their purpose is reflected over the medium and long-term activities or whether it is reflected in their daily activities, that is not necessarily the case. And therefore, the corporate value or the corporate culture is not necessarily reflected in the actual activities. Those are some challenges. Over the short term, in generating profit, there are many cases in which the corporate values are not necessarily taken into consideration. And in the meantime, IoT is penetrating and climate change is creating issues. There are transformative changes that we are facing, and therefore, the needs that we see might have changed in nature, or maybe the priorities might have changed. ESG and SDGs reflect such a change in challenges, and providing solution to those challenges would contribute to the sustainable growth of the company. That is the mindset that's shared by many of the capitalists. In the purpose, although we have a very high sense of mind, but the focus might be different. And that could be the cause for sluggish growth, improvement in corporate value. Although there are some companies that are very active on that front, overall, clear vision and purpose and communication of progress to the stakeholders is not sufficient. There's more improvement that can be seen. In the meantime, in order to respond to the needs of shareholders, it's not only disclosure that we should be talking about. We need to be having discussions within the company and also be aware of the risks and opportunities. And the progress along the way should also be disclosed with the stakeholders. And that, I think, needless to say, is critical in maintaining good dialogue with the stakeholders, including investors. Now, when it comes to disclosure in Japan and availability and credibility of corporate information disclosure, there are a couple of points that has been discussed. On the 4th of this month, there's an organization with a committee on corporate information disclosure came up with their outcome of discussion on availability and credibility of corporate information disclosure. Especially in Japan, there are issues associated to diverse disclosures, and in the meantime, there are different needs for disclosure documents. How should we be addressing it? For example, ensuring the quality and guaranteeing the right quality. Those issues have been highlighted in this document. The details can be found from the website of the Japan's CPA Association's website. Some key points include structure and information composition of disclosure documents, and reporting framework and standards, and connecting of corporate information disclosure and corporate governance. And the fourth point is audit and guarantee in order to enhance credibility, especially point number 2, which is the reporting framework and standard, and number 3, connection of corporate information disclosure and corporate governance are very closely related to the topic of today's seminar, VRF. If we could go to the next page. Now, in Japan, with regards to integrated reporting publication, we are quite advanced from international standards. And on the next slide, the publication issuance of integrated reports in 2018, about the 531 out of 579, or in other words, 1 out of 4 companies have published the integrated report. 1 out of 4. But in the meantime, if you look at them individually, and this is not the area of expertise, my expertise, but KPMG and also the Japan CPA Association, when I interviewed them, it seems that there are issues associated with the quality of the integrated report. And what is the framework? To what extent information should be disclosed? There seems to be quite a number of people who are having a hard time determining the scope to be covered in their integrated report. There are a lot of challenges associated to this. And from my perspective of joining the discussion at the board as a director, one reason is that the perspective of disclosure at the top level of a company. To what extent is there discussion on disclosure at the board level? Simply put, disclosure is related to CFO or IR or the communications department. What is the story that we want to communicate to the market that is not necessarily integrated with the strategy of the company? That, I think, is in the background of this challenge. In May this year, KPMG conducted a mindset study, and about 3,200 people seem to have taken part in this. And I will show you in the next slide. Integrated report. And management of the business is not necessarily aligned. And the materiality analysis and evaluation requires more improvements. Or the board and the management cooperation and support is not sufficient. It requires more improvement in this area. According to the results of the questionnaire, we can see that people see that these are areas of improvement. And the materiality should be enriched, risks and opportunity, strategy, and the resource allocation. These are areas that are deemed to be important areas for improved disclosure in the integrated reports. So it's not just voluntary report disclosure, but as you see in the next slide, securities report also needs to be improved over the medium and long term. The perspective of the business should be reflected. This is highlighted as one of the main challenges to be addressed. In other words, in creating an integrated report, risks and opportunity, it's not sufficiently shared at the board level, and it is not necessarily linked with the medium and long-term strategy. These are fundamental challenges that have not been sufficiently addressed. And there's another challenge associated to quality, which is with regards to non-financial assets like ESG. What kind of impact will it have on financial performance over time? It's very difficult to come up with tangible ways to measure that. There may be some in the audience today who are having a hard time to address that. People are more aware of ESG and environment-related disclosure and framework. There are many available these days. Which framework should our company base our activities on and disclose our information? And how can we align ourselves with the needs of investors? This is a pain point. And from the company's disclosure perspective, what is the standard to be used and what should be the scope? This is unclear. And how about the competitors? People are struggling their way forward by looking at the competitor's situation. And from investors' perspective, since there are a lot of standards, it's very difficult to compare companies.
Given this situation, the investors have called for integrated report, a globally unified standard. And as Mr. Mori has stated, IFRS Foundation is setting up an ISB, a standard board. So taking the first steps towards the international standards. The integrated thinking and integrated report, IIRC and SASB, those promoters are getting together to create the VRF. VRF would be fully supporting the IFRS Foundation's efforts in standard setting. Japanese companies should not be reactive, but should be more proactive and prepare for the eventual development. And as a pioneer in the stakeholder capitalism, I'm sure there are many benefits or contributions that Japanese companies can bring. Now, we should not just be looking at the development in Asia, but the penetration of international standards in Asia will be helpful. It's not a question of how your disclosure documents are being evaluated and appreciated, but for the companies in making one's own investment by using the international standards, the companies will be able to know better the business opportunities and learn more about the potential risks and opportunities. So it's not just a question for its own company, but the promotion or the spread of such would benefit the entire market and the industry. And in that regard, I believe that there is every reason for us to commit to this. Janine and the CEO of IIRC, Tilley, will be discussing in greater detail. But at VRF, the business network of IIRC and SASB's alliance would be continued to create the network. There are businesses that are willing to have the integrated report, but there are small businesses that do not have the resource and knowledge. To support this, a simple and clear framework and standards are being worked on. Participating in network has many benefits. It's not just within the framework or the scope of disclosure. It's not just for knowing how to put together the integrated report, or not just for the disclosure's sake, but the inherent benefit leads to in putting together the strategy of the management and implementation. By having a more organized view, you'll be able to enhance the corporate value and capture more opportunities to strengthen your management. Knowing the trend of the global market, you'll be able to engage in in-depth discussion with the investors. I'm not promoting just the VRF, but I would like to talk about the special interest group. Global thinking and strategy are adopted by some renowned businesses. We are trying to share such experience with the bigger audience. I'm not just suggesting that you become a network member of VRF, but you will know better the developments overseas. I would suggest that you be proactive so that you will be able to learn more about the trends and developments elsewhere. Janine and Terry were interviewed, and this was featured in the Nikkei newspaper at the inception of the VRF. And the editor said that Japanese businesses should not be just following the already established rules, but should be proactively participating in developing new and better rules to contribute to the betterment of the system. I agree. Being a part of the network will allow you to know early the global developments, but in addition, the Japanese companies, there are some very advanced companies, and they could be taken up as a case studies so that we can create the so-called take and give relationship. I hope you will be part of that network, because this, I'm sure, would lead to the betterment of the corporate disclosure in Japan. What I have said may not be worthy of the keynote, but I have tried to share my thoughts with you. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you, Madam Ms. Kobayashi. Improving the quality of the reporting by the Japanese companies. You have shared many of your ideas and thoughts. I appreciate this. So this concludes the first part of the program.
We will now start the second half of the program. We have panel discussion. The Future of Corporate Reporting, led by Value Reporting Foundation, is the title of the panel discussion. We have panelists. The first speaker is a former IIRC CEO and current Value Reporting Foundation Special Advisor, Mr. Charles Tilley. And the second panelist is a former SASB CEO and current Value Reporting Foundation CEO, Ms. Janine Guillot, and Mitsubishi UFJ Trust Bank Asset Management Business Department, Responsible Investment Promotion Office, Responsible Investment Head, Mr. Masahiro Kato. These are the three panelists who will be joining us in the discussion. In the panel discussion, the moderator is from KPMG Japan, and Value Reporting Foundation Ambassador, Ms. Yoshiko Shibasaka. For the panel discussion, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A box you find at the bottom right of the screen. Due to interest in time and the closing time of the panel discussion, we may not be able to entertain all your questions. Your understanding is greatly appreciated. May I pass the microphone over to Shibasaka-san. Thank you very much for the kind introduction, and I want to thank everyone for joining us today. The forming of VRF is very meaningful, as we've heard from Kobayashi-san. Many people are interested in this organization, and today we have the opportunity of hearing directly from two important persons who have been leading this initiative. I'm very much looking forward to this. So Janine-san, Charles-san, I want to ask you to, first of all, give us a presentation on VRF. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and welcome, everyone. I am going to talk a little bit about why we merged, why SASB and IIRC merged, and then talk a little bit about our goals. So next slide. First, why did we merge? First, we heard loud and clear the demand for rationalization of the field. There was much demand from both businesses and investors. We also believe that in order to simplify the field, organization consolidation was necessary. We also felt that our combined resources and relationships were necessary to support the global system, and especially the work of the IIRC Foundation. So next slide. We are one global organization. We have three principal resources. Those are the integrated thinking principles, the integrated reporting framework, and the SASB standards. And we intend to advance a simplified corporate reporting landscape by bringing together our existing framework and standards. And then we intend to provide active support to the Global Sustainability Standards Board under the IIRC Foundation. So if we go to the next slide, these are some numbers about the Value Reporting Foundation. We have 2,500 integrated framework users. We have 1,000 SASB Standards reporters. And we have, as you can see, a broad network of both business and investor relations around the world. Next slide. Our people, we have nearly 80 staff, including several secondees in Japan. We have a wide range of skill sets, engineers, accountants, doctorates, lawyers, and our staff cumulatively speak 17 languages. So we've really equipped to fulfill our mission as an international standards center. If we go to the next slide, I'm going to hand this to Charles Tilley, who will talk about the resources of the Value Reporting Foundation.
Good morning. I'm just checking I can be heard. I can't see myself at the moment.
Yes, we can
Can
hear
you hear?
you. Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Well, good day to all of you, and it's a great pleasure to be with you. And thank you, KPMG and the JPX, for putting on this webinar, which so far I've been found very interesting indeed. So the Value Reporting Foundation's focus is very much upon supporting both how businesses and investors take their decisions. And in that regard, we're supporting that decision making with three principal resources: integrated thinking and the principles behind that, and I'll come back to that in a minute, the integrated reporting framework, and the SASB Standards. And underpinning all of this is the opportunity to communicate effectively, to take good quality decisions, which will improve, we hope, both the capital allocation to investors and from a business point of view, and ultimately focusing upon the wider societal goals of financial stability and sustainable development. So if we can move to the next slide, please. And the first of these three areas, the integrated thinking principles. The next slide, please. The integrated reporting is all about telling a comprehensive story, but that is about how the company is creating value over time, specifically through its business model and the resources and relationships it needs to deliver value to its customers, for its employees, for its supply chain, for wider society. But the foundation of that is, of course, how does the company itself operate? And in that regard, how is the company delivering on its purpose, delivering that purpose through high quality values, and implementing its strategy through its business model to create value for its customers and the other people it's working for, what we call the capitals. And over the next few months, we plan to develop a set of integrated thinking principles, very much focused upon supporting the governance and management of companies, and very much aiming to help what Izumi-san was just talking about in terms of how companies do integrate and connect their activities to achieving what the value that the customers, employees, and so forth are looking for. Izumi-san also referenced our special interest group on integrated thinking, and they're going to be producing the first report under the new Value Reporting Foundation banner at the end of this month. And that is work being undertaken by the Business Network, which again I will come back to later. So if we can move to the next slide, please. Now, we know that in Japan, integrated reporting is widely adopted. It is, we believe, a excellent framework to provide effective communication on strategy, governance, performance, and prospects. It's done through a multi-capital lens, so very much thinking about all the resources and relationships which are critical to an organization. And the framework has been updated in January this year, so it is completely up to date and relevant to today's business environment. The critical content elements of the organization of the framework are, how is the organization set up, and how does it fit? And this is very important, into the external environment, and how will that external environment impact the organization going forward? It links also to the governance, the business model, risk and opportunities, and the performance. And again, very importantly, looking forward, the outlook. How is the company expected to perform in terms of driving value over time? And if we can then move on to the next slide, please. The integrated reporting framework is about telling that overall story, but absolutely critical to any report is its reliability and completeness, and in particular, therefore, the consistency and comparability of the information included. And this is where the SASB standards come in, providing investors with that comparable information. And it also helps one thinking about the connectivity of the information, which leads back to integrated thinking. So if we move to the next slide, the overall focus, as I started in this section of the presentation, is to provide an integrated tool set supporting decision-making from a business perspective, how the company then tells its story, which then enables the investor to take its decisions about its resource allocation. And all of that in the context of high-quality communication. So integrated thinking, principles, an integrated reporting framework, and SASB standards. And just moving then on to the next slide, please. And I think here it's really important to demonstrate the importance of how the framework and the SASB standards are complementary, and they're powerful if they work together. In effect, you need the framework and the standards need each other. The framework being industry agnostic, the standards being very specific on the individual industries around the world, 77 in fact. And I'm going to hand back to Janine in a minute to talk through examples in that regard. The framework is about the overall story. It's therefore principle-based. The SASB standards about the specific metrics, and the SASB standards dig down into the detail of how an operation actually performs and the relevant metrics and topics that are specific to its individual business. And what's really important about these two is the framework is about the connectivity. It drives that connectivity. How do companies think about these issues? How do you ensure that while supporting your customers, you're also supporting your employees, the supply chain, and so forth? And then how do you compare one company to another? It provides that very important comparability. And just moving on to the next slide, to say that there is already very close alignment between the IR framework and the which focuses on the capitals or the resources, which are about creating long-term success. There's alignment between that framework and the SASB sustainable dimensions. And there's already been a paper produced on this subject. But as you can see here, that there is that complementarity, and we are currently working on a paper which is about the overall architecture of a comprehensive corporate reporting system. So bring in all of the standards and frameworks, and how do we get to a common language? And with that, I'll hand back to Janine to take us through some specific examples in this regard.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you very much. And as Charles mentioned, there is close alignment between the IR capitals and the SASB sustainability dimensions. So I will show you an example. So on the next slide, here is an example for one industry, and that industry is oil and gas, exploration, and production. And you can see 4 of the IR capitals. And next to that, the relevant SASB disclosure topics. So, for example, in human capital, the relevant SASB topic is workforce health and safety. In natural capital, the relevant SASB disclosure topic is greenhouse gas emissions, air quality, energy management, and biodiversity impacts. So this is one example of how to apply the SASB standards in an integrated report for oil and gas. Let's go to the next slide. Here's an example for automobiles. In automobiles, the human capital topic is a labor practice. The natural capital topics, fuel economy, use phase emissions, material sourcing, materials efficiency. And so you can see that the topics for the IR capitals vary by industry. The next example on the next slide, chemicals. In the chemicals industry, the human capital topic, workforce health and safety. The natural capital topics include hazardous waste management, product design, safety and environmental stewardship of chemicals. And so you can see here the topics change by industry based on the issues that are most relevant in that specific industry. But they all map to the integrated reporting capitals. So I hope that gives you an example of practically how to connect the SASB standards and an integrated report. Next slide. I'm going to talk about our role in the corporate disclosure landscape. So some of you may have seen this before. It is what's called nested materiality. And it recognizes that many stakeholders use corporate reports. And those stakeholders vary from employees, customers, non-governmental organizations, investors, many types of stakeholders. And they do have different needs for information. So this graphic illustrates 3 types of information. The smallest box, the inner box, is the information that's included in the financial statements. The next box includes a broader set of information that is on sustainability matters that impact enterprise value. And then the broadest set are all of a company's impacts on all of its stakeholders. And those sets of information are interrelated. So what SASB standards cover are the middle box. Traditional financial accounting standards cover the inner box, and the integrated reporting framework connects the small box and the middle box. So that's what we call nested materiality, and it helps organize a company's reporting by target user and by the use case and what the user wants to know about the company. So if we go to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about disclosure quality. And we've heard quite a bit about that today. It's for the SASB standards, and Charles will talk about this for an integrated report. For the SASB standards, there are some suggestions to improve disclosure quality. And the things that we look at are all of the topics and the metrics in the SASB standard referenced in the company's report? And then if they're not, does the company explain why they chose not to report? And there may be good reasons. And so what's important is that the company explain why not. It's also helpful if the company reports the SASB metric code, which helps automate the information, which helps investors compare it. And then for topics is there quantitative information clearly included next to the topic? And is the information available in a structured format, like a table, which makes it easier for investors to find the information? So these are the criteria we look at when we provide advice about how to improve SASB disclosures. And now I'm going to ask Charles to talk about disclosure quality for integrated reports. So next slide.
Thank you. And so now to look at how we consider the quality for integrated reports. Izumi-san has already mentioned, there is a very high level of adoption of integrated reporting within Japan, but there is room for improvement in that quality. And so we've got a business network, the IIRC Business Network, which is now the Value Reporting Foundation Business Network, which is focused upon supporting companies to improve that quality. And one of the key benefits of the project is the report critique, which is undertaken on individual company reports. And the focus of those critiques is to see how well the company is adopting integrated reporting in the context of the fundamental concepts, guiding principles and content elements, and also in the context of how it links to other recommendations, and in particular relating to TCFD for climate and more widely on the SDGs, and also in terms of the level of assurance received, where obviously external insurance is driving greater trust in reporting, as it has done in financial standards for many decades. And these reports then integrate the strengths and also the further improvement. Now, what then we undertake is the individual critiques are for the individual companies, and they are confidential. But then there is an overall report which looks at the general trends. And in the 2020 report, you can see here the various report strengths, particularly connecting performance to strategy and to risks and opportunities. But where there are areas for improvement is very much about linking governance to strategy, and therefore, in this respect, the importance of board involvement, which again Izumi-san referenced, is so important. And looking also at how value is being created for all of the key relationships and resources. So thinking about not just the customers or the financial success, but also to support long-term success, the value created for employees, for the supply chain, for wider society, and very much also how the information is being provided in terms of future value creation. So those are important areas for improvement. Now, we'd very much welcome any of those involved with this webinar today to be involved in the network. I think it provides a very valuable resource, and as I say, we'd very much be delighted for you to join, and please do get in contact with us in that regard. And if we move to the next slide, this is another area of service from the Value Reporting Foundation, which is the example database in the context of integrated reporting. So here, these examples are providing guidance on good and best practice. Now, of course, we always are looking for more case studies, examples, and we'd very much welcome any of those that are provided, that companies in Japan be willing to provide to us. We're looking all the time for leading practice, as I'm sure many companies in Japan are, just to make sure that one really is telling one's story as effectively as possible, which is both of value to the decision-making of the investors and very much also of value to the decision-making within the company. And with that, I'll hand back to Janine to talk about what you should be expecting from the Value Reporting Foundation moving forwards into the future. Back to you, Janine.
Great. Thank you, Charles. Next slide. So what to expect? We will provide ongoing guidance on how to use the IR framework and the SASB standards together. We want to more closely align the concepts in the IR framework and the SASB standards. And we want to provide insight through case studies into how adoption of the framework and the standards is influencing decision-making. Because reporting is not an end in and of itself. It's a tool to improve decisions by companies and decisions by investors. So we also will continue to support global efforts on a comprehensive corporate reporting system through the IIRC Foundation. So that's what you can expect. And if we go to the next slide, I just want to say thank you. And Charles joins me in thanking our supporters around the world. There are many, many statements of support across 14 countries. And we did not get here alone. We got here because of all of our supporters. So thank you so much. So if we go to the next slide, both IIRC and SASB are 10 years old. And we look forward to great success in the next 10 years. So thank you.
Nations are now becoming a teenager and making advancements. You talked about the tool. Now, so how best to use the tools and expectations vis-a-vis the BRF. Those aspects will be discussed by the next speaker, Mr. Kato. So thank you. Mitsubishi UFJ Trust. I am promoting the responsible investment. My name is Kato, and I would first of all like to thank you for this opportunity. Charles talked about integrated report and SASB standard. He talked about the complementary relationship nature. So to put it in a different way, I believe that this advancement is welcomed because it is keeping abreast with the developments in the world. IRCC is providing the integrated report framework to let us know how to better report. So you are indeed providing us with the framework. If you look at the society developments, the people are focusing more on the impact and the outcome. So given many challenges, the businesses need to know what to work on, what should be considered. And that is becoming more and more important. So from that perspective, what SASB is providing is very relevant. Materiality. I think we really need to identify the materiality, what we should be looking at. So complementary is the right word. So what do we expect of VRF, and what do we have in our mind? And let me use my slides to explain to you. Please turn to the next page. If you look at this is the sort of image graphics. You have the limited management resources to implement the strategy. Where should those managerial resources be allocated? So you should look at that perspective. CapEx, as an example. You want to increase the production overseas and set up plants. If you look at the left-hand side, from the financial point of view, the capital expenditure may affect the P&L, whether it increase the depreciation cost or reduce it. And what will the fixed assets be on the balance sheet? Now, from a different perspective, and if you look at from the ESG point of view, if you construct a plant in an emerging company, you will have to minimize the environmental load on the premise where the plant will be constructed. So maybe put it the other way, you should focus on outcome, how you can contribute to the community. And if you expand the scope of perspective, will you be able to contribute to the climate change issue solution? So you have to have that perspective as well. So the corporates are engaged in activities. You will have to look at those activities from both perspectives. It should not be limited to the left-hand side or neither the right-hand side. So the enterprise value, in evaluating the enterprise value, you have to look from both perspectives. And from those perspectives, day after day, we are trying to enhance our corporate value and activities. This is another example. If you assess the corporate value from the left to the right, how to foresee the cash flow. Traditionally, on top right, you have the financial information, and on the bottom, you have non-financial information. In the traditional evaluation, it was not just the financial information, but as a matter of fact, non-financial information has been considered to enhance the corporate value. In non-financial information, the quality information was nothing special. They were indeed from the past being looked at. So this is nothing new. Now, ESGs, how do we accommodate requirement for ESGs? What is the difference from the last page? On the bottom right, the orange part refers to ESG. So it's a supplementary or additional perspective. In evaluating the corporate value, you will have to expand the scope of your perspective and address even wider area ranges of information. So the message is that ESG is not a standalone. It's not something special, but you have to have a wider range of information to evaluate the company so that the accuracy of risk return evaluation would be improved. So ESG is nothing special. You have to look at that also for a better risk return. So ESG is nothing special, and you have to look at the corporate value without. Thank you. Now, the investors and businesses. So they are really looking at the value from the social point of view by looking at the factors that they were not necessarily looking at in the past.
Actually, we have a question. We've received a question, and this is a question to VRF, members of VRF. Earlier, this was briefly mentioned in the presentation that was made earlier. ISSB, in relation with ISSB of IFRS Trust Foundation. What is the relationship with that, and what is how are you going to build a relationship with other initiatives? May I ask Janine-san to please take this question?
Yes. So we have, we serve is a better word, on the working group, a technical readiness working group of the IFRS Foundation, which is advising on the formation of the ISSB. And we are helping with the development of a prototype climate standard that could be considered to be one of the first products of the ISSB. It will have to be exposed for public comment.
Much for that. This seems to be an area of very high interest. And there is also another question from Kato-san. There are lots of different reports out there. It was also briefly mentioned in the VRF presentation, but from the investor's perspective, how should the investors make use of the reports and the information that becomes available? The companies are working very hard on that front, but I think it would offer some challenges to the investors. Kato-san, if I could get your thoughts on that. Yes, indeed. Receiving lots of information, companies are coming up with different types of reports, and this diverse source of information is not a zero-sum game. The information that is received, how could those information be leveraged that will lead to evaluation of the value of the company? This perspective, I think, is very important. From a comprehensive perspective, to leverage and utilize corporate reporting, I think that is one aspect of your question. Comprehensive, broad information is being offered. What and how is to be reflected or taken into account in thinking about the value of the company, this method and the expertise. This, I believe, is the challenge for investors. So investors need to skill up their capabilities. And I want to share with you an example of what we do at our company. analysts. These are people who are window persons or people who engage with the IR departments of companies, and these analysts are responsible for engagement. They are the ones who know the companies best. ESG, integrated reporting, integrated information. It's not only about the company's information, but ESG information, global macro information. How could these different sources of information will be integrated? ESG information, in the meantime, is being covered by my department, the Responsible Investment Department. Our staff are engaged in various initiatives and also dealing with international investors, looking at the best practices and how things can be addressed on this front. And the key point in this aspect is the analysts who are the window persons for companies and the window persons, the Responsible Investment Office, that is the window person to the international community. How to integrate the two is quite critical. Myself, we have meetings with analysts, as well as responsible investment team, and the analysts would offer us the business model of companies, the strengths of companies, and some key points going forward. These information will be shared by the analysts, and from us, the responsible investment team will look at the global challenges and some key highlights from a global perspective and how it will be addressed over time, and so forth. So it's a top-down and bottom-up approach that come together so that ESG challenges that is fit to the business model of the company can be offered in thinking about the best engagement forward for that particular company. And this is an area that we want to really strengthen going forward. And therefore, I hope that we can engage in discussions with many businesses. So the VRF tool, I think, could be useful for that. It will be very effective for both sides, and I hope that the VRF tool will be constructive. And I truly believe that the communication is imperative for that. And the communication with the participants is also very critical, and I want to open the floor for questions. So I want to do a questionnaire for using the poll system, and I want to ask everyone to please join.
If you remember, please bear with us. This is a questionnaire. You have to choose one. The middle box, the Janine's box, should be shared or should be made common. So which materiality should be emphasized or focused? Is it A or B or C? And this relates to the three boxes or the nest that Janine talked about. The financial materiality in terms of impact on enterprise financial value, broader materiality. Please choose one. And now we can show you the results. A, B, C, B, I think has won the larger vote. Now, again, what do you think, having looked at the results? Janine, would you like to comment on the views of the audience?
Well, what I would say is that all of these views are important, and it comes down to knowing the audience, knowing the use, how the audience will use it. And so I would say all of them are important.
Maybe some would want to focus on B. Charles? Charles, do you have any observation?
All incredibly important issues. And the previous questions were also very, very interesting. And I think the point that I would really want to emphasize is the importance of the board, the governance of the organization, having a comprehensive reporting strategy. The integrated report is, as we know, it's defined as a concise communication, which is summarizing how the company is performing and its future prospects on a multi-capital basis. And then to go into the detail which different stakeholders are looking for, you need to have reports which are of greater depth, whether that be a sustainability report, an employee report, or whatever. So the point I would emphasize, and I think all of these questions have focused upon, is two things. One is, does the board have a set of processes which provides a comprehensive overview and control of how the company tells its story on an integrated basis? And secondly, does the company have a process to ensure that it understands what's material, both from an investor perspective, but also in the context of all its key relationships? So whether it's customers, its employees, wider society.
For your comment. Thank you. As a matter of fact, I chose B. I wasn't quite sure what to choose, but I ended up with B. So I may have a similar perspective with many. As an investor, I think I thought that as investor, materiality in terms of impact on enterprise financial value is a matter of importance for investors, because this was mentioned earlier, elements that affect the finance. What are the processes and who are the people involved? By getting the peripheral information, so this effort has an impact on enterprise financial value, and then it can explain about the why, so it will become even more compelling to the readers. That's why I chose B. Kato-san, Janine-san, and Charles-san, thank you very much for participating in this panel. So we are very close to the quote. Value Reporting Foundation Ambassador, Susanne Stormer-san, will give a closing remark. Ms. Stormer or Susanne?
Pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation. I hope that by now it is very clear to all of the delegates in this webinar why the IIRC and SASB have merged to become the Value Reporting Foundation, because they too are definitely complementary. So I will address you in my capacity as an ambassador and a long-standing supporter of integrated reporting, and also as a proud member of the SASB Standards Board. I am also a practitioner. I have been preparing reports, integrated reports, since 2004 for the company I used to work for, Novo Nordisk, I know that Novo Nordisk is known in Japan, a healthcare company with a very strong purpose and very strong values. Today, I am an advisor to companies. So just like Shibasaka-san, I work to help companies manage this transition. And I just want to say to you how impressed I am by the determination and the speed with which Japanese businesses have embraced integrated reporting. We heard about 1 in 4 working with integrated reporting. But we also heard that there is a need to improve the quality. And this is where the foundation, the Value Reporting Foundation, can be a help because it helps specify what to report on and how to go about it. But what is important here is to remember the change it represents in how companies understand and account for the value they create over the short, the medium, and the long term, value for the enterprise as well as value for society. And let me just remind you that a sustainable business is one that is also very clear on its purpose. A purpose of the business is to solve the problems for people and the planet in a profitable way and to not profit from causing problems. That is, for me, the essence of being a sustainable business. And that also speaks to the way that Japanese business is run, tuned in to long-term thinking and also contributing to society. So what we need with this form of information is that we provide better information, a 360-degree perspective for providers of financial capital. So it's an add-on to what already exists in financial statements. But it is also a tool for management to better know where the business performs well and where you would need to steer your attention in the board and in your daily operations. So for me, the true value of reporting is that it leads to better informed decisions. Better informed decisions by the users and by management. Because when we know where value is created or eroded, then we can take action and we can focus on how to maximize the value that is created by the business and to also mitigate any adverse impacts for society and for our business. I see a bright future ahead for Japanese companies who already have embraced integrated reporting and who are now ready to also adopt the SASB standards as a way of clarifying or helping to clarify what is important, what is expected, and how to manage a business much better. So I am convinced that the outcome will be better, more relevant, more comparable, and more decision-useful reporting. And with that, also better business and a better society. So I want to thank you for having me in this webinar. And I congratulate all of you for your leadership in setting up this webinar to share insights. Thank you.
With this, we would like to close our webinar by thanking more sincerely the speakers and the participants to the panel. Now, to better design the future webinars, we would appreciate your cooperation. Please respond to the questionnaire so that we can look at your input and design a better webinar in the future. Thank you very much for your participation. We apologize for spending more time than we have envisaged. Thank you.